Greetings everybody, Rob here. I'm going to show you how to light and workflow high key images. High key images are very familiar to me because when I started photography in my first studio back in the mid 80s. It was all the rage, and it was very popular right through the 80s, 90s, into the first technically to today, but especially right up until the early 2000s. We used to do a lot of families, as you can see by the picture on the screen. Families, we'd see a lot of everybody wearing matching shirts and either jeans or khaki pants, and I'm like, I'm trying to push people away from that. I'm like, come as you are now, especially when you got 8 kids. But high key is very, very popular. So again, blue jeans, white top was all the rage. So as you can see in this image here. So anyways, very, very popular. Always shot high key for the most part. I've been getting away from it a lot in the last while, but I still like it. I like it especially for black and whites, for that painterly look. So here's the thing about how to set up for high key, and really not much has changed with a few variations. So the image I just showed you, this one here, this is the exact setup. So I have a 10-foot or 9-foot paper backdrop. I used to have my backdrops in my studio built in, and they were high key, painted with white, sort of an eggshell porch paint, very durable paint. Just a little tip here for you: when you're using a good outdoor rugged paint like that, you don't paint it every time it gets dirty and scuffed. You clean it, because it's a very durable paint. If you start throwing on too many layers, it just builds up and it gets complicated. So that's what I used to do. Just get this, there's these almost erasers that I would use to clean up the backdrop, and maybe every couple of years I give it a coat of paint. So the background is paper, and it's white, but it's not pure white, especially when there's not enough light falling on it. We want it to go almost pure white or white. So here we have our 6-foot Octodome, and you can see it's coming in at a very strong angle, almost 45 degrees-ish, thereabouts. The background lights are at f11. This is at ISO 100, and for this particular shot, I shot it on the Sony a7R II with the 85mm Batis lens at 5.6 and a half. There's a couple variations, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Here's the key. So the main light determines the background light. So you want to have at least a full stop and a half. I have a stop and a half here. That's my preferred setting. So I have the background lights. These two softboxes are measuring at f11. So that's 1.5 stops over my main light. So my camera is set at the same as the main, which is 5.6 and a half. Well, that's pretty obvious, right? By the way, I have grids, those eggshell grids on these softboxes, but for these shots here, I take them off because I want maximum output. So that's the basic setup. So you can see the main light's 5.6 and a half. There's the shot of the girls that I'm going to work on. There's with texture. This was from a series, actually. These girls are in here, and their mom, that's one of them right there. Their mom is a dentist. She owns a dental office, and we did a composite. This was from years ago, and the shot that I'm going to work on today was from very recent. We updated the image. But that's not what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about high key. So here's the reading for the background, which was f11. So again, 1.5 stops difference. Okay, and I'm going to use this texture for some of them. All right, so I kind of lied before I get into the actual workflow. Sony a7R II, there's the 85mm lens, and it's like, oh, it's at f11. I told you 5.6 and a half. I needed extra depth for this shot because I have the 3 girls in a row, and I wouldn't shoot this at 5.6 and a half. So I needed extra depth of field, so I increased my ISO. I just got kind of lazy. I could have easily changed the lights around and whatnot. And instead of doing that, I thought just increase the ISO so that I could shoot at f11. My normal aperture in studio is f8. But for this particular series, I went for 5.6 and a half to achieve the 1.5 stop difference between the mane in the background. I hope this makes sense to you guys. I'm sure it does, especially for those of you who've been around any length of time. So this is the full resolution. It's nice size files. I love this camera. I'm absolutely crazy about it. So I'm going to, just for the sake of, I'm going to bring it down to 3000. So this is straight off the camera. So you can see the lights, the highlights in the eyes. That's from the big Octodome. It's nice and high. It's like 10 to 2 type of thing, or 10 to 12. Often, didn't do it this case, but often I'll put a reflector just below the main light, and I'll get a little extra specular underneath the eyes when I do that. So actually, let me show you really quick what that looks like. I know I'm getting distracted here, but I just want to show you what I mean by, okay, this is not a high key shot, but you could see there's a reflector. It's the same lighting pretty much. Well, mind you, it's a darker background, but you can see the reflector on the bottom here. Okay, just wanted to show you that. So for this shot here, I did not put a reflector. Now you'll notice there's a little bit of the light showing here. It's not a big deal. Now if I go to my curves, I don't normally do this. You know what? Instead of doing that, let me do. I don't normally do this when I'm workflowing, but I'm going to use this to show you. So 3x3 average. I want to show you the reading from the info. All right. So you can see right here the info RGB 248, 246. The white balance is off, but it's close. It's not exactly perfect, but it's close. You know, it works. Close enough, good enough. But look at this. This is 241. I mean, pure white is 255. There's 232. And look at over here. Oh, there's 255. So when I'm working on high key, I never get it perfect. That's my point. My point is that I get the bulk of my exposure. I'm 90% in. That's okay for me. So I work it out this way when I do shoot high key. So I'm going to go to raw filter. I shoot everything JPEG, by the way. So, but if you were shooting raw, it's the same kind of idea. And I adjust my exposure, and I look at the background, and I look at the skin tones, and I'll adjust the whites. Maybe I want to blast that background out. But I'm more concerned right now with the skin tones. I want good skin tones. So let's go to highlights. You know, if I did that, I could really blast it out. But I'm kind of pushing into the skin tones, so I don't want to kill the skin tones. This is good enough. Okay? So we got raw. It's very slight difference. And when I want to get a pure white backdrop, if I have a little bit of detail, which I do, I have a little bit of detail in there, I'll go to curves. And I'll pick the high key and I'll pop it right in there. Bingo. Let's go try it over there. So I'll get a nice white backdrop. That's from before. Look at the top of the image right in this area here. Okay, now when I'm working flowing my images, I'm doing this very, very fast. Okay, so when I went from here to here, the skin tones changed. I don't want that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stay here. I'm going to click the history brush here, and I'm going to hit the history brush over here. That opacity looks fine. I'm going to increase, and then I'm going to pop in the history so that I can bring back the skin tones in the previous state. I hope you understand what I'm talking about. All right, then, oh wait, there's more. Let's do the lasso. I'll just go select that. I'm really not worried about that. Fill, content aware, boom, deselect. Okay, it's still, there's still a little bit of gray up there. And since it's so far away from the girls, I'm going to increase the brush. I'm going to use the brush tool. And I'm going to select over here, and I'm just going to paint it in. See that? Okay, and it works pretty fast. So there we got a nice, clean, high key. Okay, there's zero retouching's been done to this. You know, I would normally pop out the eyes a little more, do a little bit on the skin. I mean, there. Oh, I got my logo here. Sorry about that. Ignore that. So, yeah, I usually do a little bit more enhancing, but that's another video for another day. I just wanted to show you how I do high key. And again, when I'm working on these, I'm working fast. I'm boom, 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 boom. I don't like spending too much time, but I want it to look good. This kind of an image here, I think looks really nice, black and white. And sometimes I'll add a texture. I've got a ton of textures. I collect them, I buy them, I swipe them. So if I want to do a texture backdrop for these girls, I might do that. You know, see over here, it's a little bit. So I'll reduce the exposure or the opacity. So when you're starting with a good exposure, decent white balance, you're 90, 95, 98% in. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but somebody is slamming the doors. All right, let's just increase that. Let's decrease the opacity on the brush. So sometimes I'll do that and I'll start playing with it, flatten, or let's go to, not invert, sorry. Let's go to sepia. Half sepia looks really good for something like this. Half sepia on black and white, just a tinge of sepia. Give it that painterly look. Anyways, I'm getting distracted. You get the idea. This is how I shoot high key and quickly how I workflow the basic image. And that's the name of that tune. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.